A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
My Weird Prompts is a community-driven initiative exploring how AI can fuel curiosity and uncover the fascinating ways our world works. GPU compute for this podcast is generously provided by Modal, the AI infrastructure platform that developers love. Modal makes it easy to run AI workloads in the cloud with instant scaling and no infrastructure headaches.
So, we've all seen the headlines from the late February strikes. The US and Israel hitting Iranian nuclear and military infrastructure was a massive kinetic event, but the story that's really sticking is that elementary school strike. It's become this flashpoint of polarization. You've got people saying it was a war crime, others saying it was human shields, and then you have the Senate grilling Air Force generals because, as one senator put it, anyone with Google Maps can see it is a school.
Herman Poppleberry here, and that quote from the Senate hearing is exactly where the technical conversation starts. When a senator says, "Just look at Google Maps," they're pointing out a massive discrepancy between civilian availability of data and the internal military targeting pipeline. Today's prompt from Daniel is asking us to look under the hood of that pipeline. We aren't just talking about a set of GPS coordinates. We're talking about the homework, the target folders, the triage, and the briefing process that happens before a pilot ever touches a release button.
Right, because if it was as simple as a Google Maps layer, we wouldn't have these catastrophic errors. Or maybe we would. That's the irony. By the way, fun fact for the listeners, today's episode is actually powered by Gemini 3 Flash Preview. It's helping us navigate these murky technicalities. Herman, let's start with the target folder. When a military decides a building in Tehran or Isfahan is a target, what does that actually look like in a database?
It's a document called a Basic Encyclopedia or BE entry, which lives inside a larger target intelligence folder. It's not just a point on a map. It's a living digital file that fuses SIGINT, which is signals intelligence like intercepted communications, with IMINT, the imagery from satellites and drones, and HUMINT, which is reports from actual people on the ground. A target folder includes structural analysis. What is the building made of? How thick are the walls? It includes a pattern of life analysis, which tracks when people enter and leave. It also includes the CDE, or collateral damage estimation. This is a mathematical model that predicts how many civilians might be harmed based on the blast radius of specific munitions.
So they're running simulations before the strike. But in the case of this Iranian school, the homework clearly failed. The reports coming out of the Senate hearing suggest the US was using outdated intelligence. How does an elite military target a school thinking it's a military barracks? Does the folder just not get updated?
That's the failure point. Intelligence has a shelf life. In the targeting world, they call it target decay. If your last imagery of a site is from 6 months ago and 3 months ago, the Iranian military moved out and a local municipality turned the building into an elementary school, your folder is stale. The technical pipeline requires constant revetting. Every target has a timestamp. If the intelligence isn't refreshed within a certain window, the target should technically be moved to an inactive list.
But when you're planning a massive wave of strikes like we saw in February, the pressure to maintain a high volume of targets in the bank is huge. You can't revet 500 targets in 24 hours with total certainty. Is it a resource issue? I saw some noise about the war on woke affecting this, basically claiming that budget shifts or personnel changes in certain intelligence wings led to a brain drain or a lack of focus on these basic updates.
There's a legitimate technical argument buried in that political rhetoric. If you cut funding for the analysts who specialize in manual imagery interpretation or cultural context, the people who would notice a school zone sign in a Farsi language intercept, You're left with automated systems or overworked juniors. The Target Value Index, or TVI, is how they prioritize. If a target is ranked as high value, it gets more eyes. If it's a secondary military warehouse, it might get processed with less scrutiny. If that warehouse became a school and the analyst was rushed, the error propagates through the system.
It's the garbage in, garbage out principle, but with 500-pound bombs. Let's talk about that triage process. You mentioned the target value index. How do they actually decide what gets hit tonight versus what stays on the list for next week?
It's a matrix. You have the strategic importance. Does hitting this degrade the enemy's ability to launch missiles versus the risk of collateral? They use a system called the Joint Targeting Cycle. It's a 6-step process: commander's objectives, target development, capabilities analysis, commander's decision, mission execution, and then combat assessment. The triage happens in step 2 and 3. They look at the target bank and score them. A target with a high TVI and a low CDE, meaning it's very important and unlikely to kill civilians, is a green target. The school was likely misidentified as a green target because the metadata in the folder was wrong.
This is where the OSINT comparison is so interesting. We talked about this in episode 1590, how sometimes guys on Twitter with Maxar subscriptions find things faster than the Pentagon. If a senator can see it's a school on Google Maps, why can't an Air Force general with $1 billion satellite?
Because the military doesn't use Google Maps. They use specialized geospatial databases like the Global Geospatial Intelligence Model. These systems are designed to be secure and offline capable. The downside is they don't always pull in the noisy data of the civilian world. A Google Maps update might show a new school icon because a parent tagged it yesterday. The military's vetted database might require a signed-off report from a human source or a high-resolution drone pass to change a building's status from barracks to school. There's a bureaucratic lag that doesn't exist in the civilian world.
So the vetted nature of the data actually makes it more brittle. That's a wild thought. You're telling me that because they have higher standards for what counts as proof, they end up being more wrong than a guy looking at a Yelp review of the cafe next door?
In some cases, yes. It's a formalization trap. They trust their internal target intelligence folder more than open data because open data can be spoofed by the enemy. Iran knows we look at Google Maps. They could easily tag a missile factory as a hospital on a public map. So the military ignores the public map to avoid being tricked, but then they fail to see the reality when the public map is actually right.
Let's move to the briefing stage. Say the target is in the bank, it's been triaged, and now it's assigned to a strike package, maybe a squadron of F-35s or a drone operator in Nevada. What does the pilot actually see? Do they just see a diamond on a screen? Or do they get the whole story?
They get a target briefing card. It's a condensed version of that folder. It shows the desired point of impact, or DPI. It shows the no-strike entities nearby. That's the school next door, the mosque down the street, the hospital. The pilot's job is target identification, or TID. They have to look through their targeting pod like a high-definition thermal camera and confirm that what they see matches the briefing card.
But if the briefing card says, "This building is a barracks," and the pilot looks at it and sees a rectangular building that looks like a barracks, they're going to hit it. They aren't looking for backpacks or swing sets from 20,000 feet, especially if they're flying at night or under heavy anti-aircraft pressure.
And that's the second-order effect of the 2025 missile barrages we talked about in episode 1193. The intensity of modern conflict means these pilots are operating at a cognitive limit. If the target folder says clear to engage, the pilot is conditioned to trust the intelligence. They assume the homework was done by the thousands of analysts back at base. They aren't there to second-guess the entire intelligence community in the 3 seconds before they drop a weapon.
This brings us back to the politics of it. You mentioned the war on woke angle earlier. If you're cutting the human geography departments, the people whose whole job is to understand the social layout of a city like Tehran, because those programs are labeled as unnecessary social science or woke, you are effectively lobotomizing your targeting process. You're left with just the hard physics of the building, but you lose the human context of what's inside it.
That is the core of the controversy. Intelligence fusion requires diverse inputs. You need the nerd who speaks the local dialect and follows Iranian social media just as much as you need the nerd who knows the thickness of reinforced concrete. When those soft intelligence roles are deprioritized, the targeting process becomes a blind machine. It's efficient, but it's inaccurate.
It's interesting to see how this connects to the broader information attrition idea. In episode 1193, we talked about how failing missiles can still win by exhausting the enemy's defenses. Here we're seeing a different kind of attrition. The attrition of accuracy. If you strike enough targets, eventually the target decay is going to catch up with you, and you're going to hit a school. It's a statistical inevitability if your refresh rate on intelligence is slower than the speed of change on the ground.
And the speed of change is accelerating. In modern urban warfare, a building can change its function in a week. If you're building a target bank for a war with Iran that you've been planning for 5 years, some of those folders might be years old. They might have been re-vetted using automated satellite algorithms that look for military vehicles, but if the Iranians just stop parking trucks outside and start using a school bus, the algorithm misses it.
So, what's the takeaway for the OSINT community? We've got all these people on Telegram and Twitter mapping out strikes in real time. They're often the ones who first point out the errors. Is there a way for the military to actually use that without being spoofed?
That's the million-dollar question. Some analysts are calling for a hybrid intelligence model. Basically, you'd have a civilian verification step where a target is checked against public maps and social media right before execution. But the military is terrified of operational security leaks. If you put a target on a civilian verification list, you're basically telling the enemy what you're going to hit.
It's a catch. 22. You either stay secret and risk being wrong, or you stay open and risk being intercepted. But for the average person listening, I think the most important thing to realize is that precision warfare is a bit of a misnomer. The precision refers to the missile hitting the coordinates. It doesn't refer to the intelligence being precise about what's at those coordinates.
The missile is a genius. The folder might be an idiot. That's the distinction. We have the technology to hit a specific window from 100 miles away, but we don't always have the human intelligence to know if there's a classroom behind that window. As we move toward more AI-assisted targeting, this problem might actually get worse before it gets better. An AI can process 1 million images, but it doesn't know what a school feels like. It just knows it doesn't look like a tank.
Which is why the Senate hearings are so vital. They're forcing a combat assessment in the public eye. When General Alexis is grilled about why anyone with Google Maps knew more than his analysts, it forces the military to look at that intelligence pipeline and find the leaks. Whether it's budget cuts, war on woke, distractions, or just old-fashioned bureaucratic lag, the homework wasn't done.
If you want to dive deeper into how these conflicts are mapped, check out episode 1590 on OSINT maps versus nightly news. It explains that gap in data availability perfectly. And for the strategic logic of these strikes, episode 890 on Operation Roaring Lion is the foundational listen.
It's a heavy topic, but understanding the murky technicalities is the only way to get past the slogans. Targeting isn't just a mouse click, it's a years-long process of data fusion that can fail at any link in the chain.
This has been My Weird Prompts. Big thanks to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power this show and our research pipeline.
And thanks as always to our producer Hilbert Flumingtop for keeping the gears turning behind the scenes. If you're finding these deep dives useful, the best way to support us is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really does help new people find the show.
You can find all our past episodes and the full archive at myweirdprompts.com.
We'll see you in the next one. Stay curious.
Goodbye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My weird prompts, that's the flows from sloth.